Aloha, my name is Hope Young and I'm with Kokua Mau. We're talking today about advanced care planning, and this is something that Kokua Mau loves to go out into the community and talk about. So we are a nonprofit 501c3 community benefit organization. We actually are supported by our members, and our members include health plans, long-term care organizations, hospitals, churches, temples, hospices, and passionate individuals out in the community. I get the joy of working with some folks that I call ambassadors. They're volunteers. They spend their time talking about advanced care planning, and they volunteer their time to work with us at Kokua Mau. Our ambassadors are nurses, social workers, and doctors, and people that are passionate about having these conversations and making sure that people are getting what they want. Our three areas of our activity is that we work with seriously ill people and their loved ones to ensure that they understand the decisions that they may be faced with. We also provide professional networking, and we work on policy and legislation. We like to think of ourselves as leading a movement for change. So our movement aims to make advanced care planning and open communication about serious illness and end-of-life care a cultural norm. We want people to be talking about this and not be afraid to have these conversations. We really hope that people will start talking about advanced care planning while they're healthy, not at a time of crisis, so that as a healthy individual, we're thinking ahead and we're practicing. So what is advanced care planning? Well, advanced care planning is the ongoing process of thinking about, talking about, writing down, and sharing your wishes for care. It is a gift for your loved ones to have this information so that they can support you during a time of crisis. Why is it important? Well, especially right now during COVID-19, these conversations are really important because hospitals are doing things differently. So before, anybody could come and visit you in a hospital if you were in the hospital, but now they've got all these rules and restrictions. Doctors are doing more telehealth visits. They're doing things differently now. So why not take that opportunity to have these conversations now? No one really knows when you're going to become ill. You could be walking on the street and get hit by a bus. Life happens. You never know what's going to happen. And advanced care planning is an opportunity to ensure that your wishes are known. It also helps to prepare your loved ones so that it eases their burden so that they don't have to guess what you would want or maybe what you wouldn't want. So we encourage you to do the advanced care planning while you're healthy. Types of planning, as you can see, there are different types of planning. I'm always happy when I hear kupuna say that they've got their estate planning already done. They got their make box made. They've got the songs for their funeral service. And they get so excited about that. And honestly, I love that. They're giving a gift to their loved ones. They've already done that, right? So advanced care planning is the same idea. You want to give your loved ones that information so that they have the tools to support you. So this is why we do advanced care planning. Because if the unexpected happens, who would speak for you? And when they know what you want or possibly what you don't want. Because end-of-life decisions shouldn't be made at the end of life. We want to talk about living well all the way up until the time of death. And this is part of what advanced care planning can do for you and for your loved ones. So today I'm going to share a story about Myrtle. This is a real woman who we've adopted her story from California Post Association, but Myrtle was a real individual and we like to honor her by sharing her story. And so you can see how the different documents can support us through the time of need. So Myrtle Espero, several years ago, she had watched her husband die, and she was concerned because the way he passed, he was on 6 weeks on a ventilator, and she just did not want that type of ending for herself. So she decided she was not going to face that same situation, so she wrote herself a living will. And she stated in that living will that she didn't want extraordinary measures taken to keep her alive if she was terminally ill or permanently unconscious. And then she took that document and she locked it up in her desk with all her other important papers. Tom is Myrtle's nephew, and recently when Tom went trying to reach her, he couldn't get in touch with her, so he decided to go and check up on Aunt Myrtle. And when he found Aunt Myrtle, she was on the floor, unable to speak and confused. So Tom called 911 and the ambulance came and took Myrtle to the ER. They found out she had had a brain hemorrhage. In our speak, she had a stroke. So they tended to Myrtle, and when asked if she had an advanced healthcare directive, Tom didn't know. He said he didn't know anything about the living will that she had locked up with all her important papers, right? So they were able to stabilize Myrtle, and they decided, let's call her daughter because her daughter might have some idea of how to take care of Myrtle during this time. And so Carol and her mother, they were estranged. So when they called Carol and asked her what she thought should be the next course of action for her mom, Carol said she has no idea what her mother would want and that she has problems of her own. And then she hangs up. What a great daughter, right? When Myrtle's primary care physician is called to see if they had had any conversations, he said he didn't know anything about Myrtle's wishes. And they hadn't discussed anything should she come down with a critical illness. However, her condition improved. She got better. And though she wasn't able to speak or speak clearly or swallow well, she was no longer confused, which was really good because her nephew Tom helped arrange for her to get some rehab in a skilled nursing facility so that they could get her stronger, get her talking better, get her better able to swallow. And so when they took her to the skilled nursing facility, they asked upon admission if she has an advanced healthcare directive. And Myrtle nodded that she did. So poor Tom had to go and find it, right? So that meant Tom had to go and break into Aunt Myrtle's desk with all her important papers. Hopefully she didn't have any fancy love letters, old love letters, anything embarrassing in that drawer. But Tom went and looked for that advanced healthcare directive, which was actually Myrtle's living will. So the physician caring for Myrtle asked Myrtle if this is what she wanted to guide her care, her living will. And Myrtle nodded yes, that's exactly what she wanted. And so the doctor encouraged Myrtle to complete an advanced healthcare directive. And that would give her an opportunity to designate her agent, her healthcare power of attorney. Here in Hawaii, we call that your healthcare agent. I like to just call that your person, the person that you trust to speak on your behalf. So Myrtle did the advanced directive, and that was naming the person who could speak for her if she was ever unable to speak for herself in the future. So Myrtle downloaded the advanced directive, free by the way, from Kokua Mau, and she discussed it with her nephew, Tom, and asked him if he would be her agent. And Tom agreed. And so they made copies of the advanced directive. Tom took a copy, the facility took a copy. Tom was able to get that copy to Myrtle's doctor's office as well. So people had access to her advanced directive. This is what we have online. This is our free version at kokuamau.org. It's free to download. We encourage you to go ahead and do this. For folks that have done estate planning in the past with lawyers, they have their own healthcare directive. But if you haven't done that yet, we encourage you to do this for free because when you go to a lawyer, they'll add on a few $100s to complete this document. Whereas if you do it yourself, you can do it for free. So what is an advanced directive? It's also called an advanced healthcare directive. It's a document that you complete when you're legally sound mind. You have to have a clear mind when you're doing this, which is why we want to ensure that you folks take the time to do this while you're healthy. Don't wait until an illness, don't wait for a diagnosis. Talk about it now, do the document now. And as life changes, you can update your document as time goes by. The purpose of the advanced directive is it's twofold. So the first section, it appoints your person, your healthcare agent, your healthcare power of attorney, the person you trust to speak on your behalf. The second part of the form, it gives them the living will portion, or the directions that you want for them to take should they need to make decisions on your behalf. So for the first section, you want to think about it. Who do you trust to make healthcare decisions for you when you cannot. Now, ideally, this would be someone that you've had these meaningful conversations about and robust conversations so that they know what your wishes are and that they're willing to advocate on your behalf. Remember, this is going to be your champion. If you're unable to speak for yourself, you want to have an agent that's going to advocate for you, ask a lot of questions, and ultimately choose decisions with your best interest in mind. Not their own, but yours. And that means they have to know what those things are. It doesn't need to be a family member. You could pick your best friend. You could pick your neighbor. But you also want to select an alternate. You want to have a second backup, because what happens if you're in a car accident with that person? You want to have a second person available to step in and take over if they need to. Your second section of this, the advanced directive, has the first section. This is the second section, your living will portion. This portion, it only becomes effective under certain circumstances. So you can say it becomes immediately effective, or you could actually wait for one of these three things to happen. If you have lost the ability to communicate your wishes regarding your healthcare decisions, and it's unlikely that you'll ever recover, or if the likely risks and burdens outweigh the expected benefits of the treatments, or if you've got an incurable or irreversible condition that will result in death within a relatively short time. So these are some things that would have to take place before your advanced directive kicks in. It's always important to say, as long as you are able to direct your care, you still are in control. So regardless of what your advanced directive says, if you have the ability to direct your own care, you are always in charge. The first question that they're asking, it's, I would want to stop or hold medical treatment that would prolong my life, or I want medical treatment that would prolong my life as long as possible within the limits of generally accepted healthcare standards. Well, that's a lot of words. Let's break that down. What does that really mean? If you've ever gone to a hospital and visited someone in the ICU, then you've seen what generally accepted healthcare standards could look like. They have machines that can keep people alive for extended periods of time. They have respirating machines, ventilators, they have tube feedings. They have things that can keep you alive for quite some time in a hospital setting. And that's what generally accepted healthcare standards would look like. If you're saying I want to stop or hold medical treatment that would prolong my life, basically you're saying we've gotten to the point where I'm good. Let's just let nature take its course. So you have the choice, and you can, again, change your mind at any time. Second part of this, part 2, artificial nutrition and hydration. This is your opportunity to tell your person what you would want. And really, here in Hawaii, this is a hard one. If you have to guess whether or not somebody wants artificial nutrition and hydration, it's a really hard one, especially because here in Hawaii, food is love, right? We go to a luau and they have you make plates to take home, share food with your loved ones. Whenever there's a party, there's always tons of food. So food, we relate to aloha and caring for each other. So by giving your person the knowledge of whether you would want an artificial tube feeding or not, that's giving them another gift that they don't have to guess. Keep in mind, if you decide that you want a temporary food nutrition, there is a time where they're going to have to stop and take it away, which could also be traumatic. Now, my mom, when she was in the ICU, she actually wound up there she had Parkinson's, congestive heart failure, she had arthritis, and she had mild dementia. She wound up in the ICU, and she had said on her documents that she wanted to try artificial nutrition and hydration. So according to her documents, they brought in the tubes. Now, when you're in a hospital in a temporary setting, the way that they do the tube feeding in a temporary setting is up the nose, down the throat, and into the belly. That's how they provide the nutrition. This is called a nasal gastro tube. Well, they got it in, and as soon as they finished, she said, "Get it out, it hurts." Okay, Mom. So they took it out. They said, "We'll come back later in a couple of hours, we'll try again." They came back in, she said, "Okay, try again." They put it in, and she immediately said, "Get it out, it hurts." Okay, we'll try again. Maybe later on, maybe we'll be able to get some food into you. When they came in the third time, she said, get out of here. I don't want that. I am so thankful that she was awake and able to direct her own care, because had she not been conscious, we would have tried, and I wouldn't have known how uncomfortable it was for her. So again, artificial nutrition, it is a personal decision. In some cases, it will prolong life. People can live for years on a tube feeding. And when it's a permanent tube feeding, it goes straight into the belly. And that requires surgery to do that. When it's a temporary one, they'll do it through the nose. In some instances, it can help prolong life. In other instances, it really doesn't. It is important to say that a dying body, an actively dying body, does not need fuel. In fact, it could actually harm the person and cause lots of discomfort if you're still feeding someone at the end of their life when they're dying. So this is a personal decision that you can make so that your loved ones don't have to guess. Do we want to do a tube feeding? Do we not want to do a tube feeding? Is this what mom would have wanted? Give them that information so they know how to direct your care. In section 2, there's another section saying, what is important to me? What makes life meaningful? What would make the quality of life unacceptable? This is your chance to put in your words what you want them to know about your care. This is your chance to say, hey, if I can't eat chocolate, watch my Korean soaps and be comfortable, let's not prolong anything. Let's just keep me comfortable, keep me happy with whatever I'm doing. Or it's also your chance to say, hey, if I've got dementia, please don't chase me around the house trying to get me to take high blood pressure pills and cholesterol pills. This is your opportunity to say, hey, I love being outdoors. As much as possible, make sure that I have that opportunity to be outdoors. This is your words, what you want, and possibly even what you don't want. So these are directions for your loved ones to know how to direct your care and how to make decisions on your behalf. In order for an advance directive to be legal, it needs to be notarized or witnessed by 2 individuals. Those individuals cannot be anyone named as your healthcare agent. They must be over the age of 18. It cannot be someone who works in a facility where you are receiving care. And one witness cannot have cannot be a relative or have inheritance rights. So witnesses, it can be a challenge, but you can do either way. Some folks like having the notarization. Some folks like having the witnesses. Either way, you want to make sure that you share your documents with those who would show up with you and let them know who you put in charge. They don't necessarily need a copy of that advance directive, but you can always tell them, hey, I did my advance directive. I gave copies to the people who need it, but I want you to know, should an emergency happen, I've named cousin Lonnie to take point. She's going to be in charge. It's a gift that you're giving to your loved ones so that they know they don't have to fight to try and be in charge of whatever is going on in your healthcare crisis. So, going back to Myrtle. So, the doctor also told Myrtle and Tom about a form called the POST. And that's an acronym for the Provider's Orders for Life-Sustaining Treatment. She said the POST is a medical order. It's documenting the patient's wishes for health care. And the first question the physician asked Myrtle about was CPR, if she would want it. And Myrtle shook her head and she said no, she didn't want CPR. So that's the first box that was checked on that POST. So the doctor recognized her response and put do not attempt resuscitation on her POST. In the second section, Myrtle chose comfort measures only, meaning she didn't want to go back to a hospital, but she did want treatment to keep her comfortable in whatever setting she could receive that care. She also said she didn't want artificial nutrition and hydration. And then Myrtle said, please, let's not bother Carol with any of this information. I don't want her being worried about any of this. Remember, Carol now is her daughter, estranged daughter, right? So Myrtle's rehab progressed, and she got much better. She regained her ability to speak and to swallow, and they discharged her and sent her home. When she got home, wouldn't you know it, Carol came for a visit. And so the visit was pleasant, but Myrtle just did not want to bring up the documents that she had completed. She didn't want to stir things up with Carol. And wouldn't you know, while Carol's visiting, Myrtle collapsed and she had to be taken to the emergency room. So when Myrtle collapsed, Carol called 911. The emergency personnel, when they came, they found Myrtle's pulse. It was hanging on the refrigerator, bright green. They grabbed the pulse, took it with her. Included with the pulse in a plastic sleeve was her advance directive. So she had the two documents together, and they transferred her to the hospital. In the ER, the EMTs gave the staff the pulse and the advance directive, and they noted that Myrtle said she did not want resuscitation. She did not want CPR, and that she wanted comfort measures. Carol was at her wit's end because she didn't understand what was going on. They thought she just wasn't taking care of her mom. Why weren't they doing more? Why weren't they trying more? So Carol was really upset because she didn't know Myrtle had made these decisions. And due to the severity of the second stroke, Myrtle actually died. She was comfortable during that process. And Tom was asked about all these various things because he is her healthcare agent, about tissue donation. And Tom agreed that whatever could be donated and used, he agreed to that. So the Advanced Healthcare Directive and the Pulse both helped Myrtle to receive the type of care that she wanted at the end of her life. But what was missing? Conversations with Carol. Had Myrtle felt the need to share that information with Carol, Carol might have not felt so helpless during that time of crisis. And possibly Carol would have understood what Myrtle's decisions were. So we really want to emphasize these conversations surrounding these documents. If you haven't had these conversations, it's really important. Yes, the documents are important, but the conversation is just as important, if not even more so. So I'm going to take you through the pulse just because I want to make sure that you understand what's on it. This is a copy of the pulse. You may be presented with it at a doctor's visit. We want to make sure that you recognize who the pulse is for. The pulse is not for everyone. The pulse is meant for people with chronic illness, people who have a serious health condition, people who are medically frail, people who are aged or really just don't want to be in a hospital. Anyone trying to avoid hospitalization because of COVID-19, they could actually benefit from a pulse. Our question is, would you be surprised if this person died within the next year? And if your response is, no, not really, I wouldn't be surprised if 99-year-old grandma died next year, well, she might be a candidate for the pulse. So really, we want to make sure that you understand, pulse is not an age requirement document. A pulse is meant because of health condition. And if you're handed a pulse at a wellness visit and you're not having any type of medical conditions, give the pulse back to your provider and say, do you know something that I don't know? Because a pulse is meant for a very specific population. In our pulse, of course, the first part of it is your name. And if you want to name somebody that you want to share this information, you can have a legally authorized representative. Keep in mind that is not the same person as your agent unless you name your agent. If you name a person on your pulse, that doesn't necessarily mean they have authority. The first section is about CPR. Would you want them to try CPR? Well, if they found you with no pulse and not breathing, I'm going to give you a moment, and I know you're out there in TV land. What happens if you have no pulse, non-responsive, and not breathing? Well, that's when they find you dead. If they found you with no pulse, not responsive, and not breathing, that is actually meant that somebody has died. We don't do CPR on a person who is alive. So you have two options here. Do you want EMTs to initiate CPR? Or would you rather them allow a natural death? This is your first question in the pulse. I'd like to also share with you what CPR really looks like. So if you've ever watched it on TV, you hear them with their paddles, clear, and somebody comes back, right? Well, CPR is actually a violent thing that happens when you're doing it. You have to actually press into the chest about 3 inches in order for it to be effective. Now keep in mind, this is only going to get to the heart. It doesn't necessarily mean that they are going to actually be able to revive you. But in order to get 3 inches into your chest, it is quite common that bones are broken and sometimes the ribs puncture the lungs. It is also important to mention that CPR for older individuals, it is not as effective. CPR is meant for someone with a sudden cardiac event. It is not necessarily meant for older individuals with heart conditions. The recovery for 70-year-olds who have CPR, it's about 10%. And that doesn't necessarily mean that they're back to the baseline. As the older you get, the smaller your chances of survival are. So I want to give you that information so that you're making an educated decision on what you would want. Would you want CPR or would you not? Hey, let's try it. If it works, great. No, I think I'll be good when I check out. Whatever is your preference, that's what you get to choose on this pulse form. The next section we want to make sure that you recognize is if you choose CPR, you must choose full treatment. You don't have the option of choosing comfort measures. We're not going to break your chest cavity. We're not going to bring you back just to have you be comfortable. That doesn't make sense. So if you're going with CPR, you need to choose full treatment. And it's also important to say that that is the default. So if you don't have a pulse, that is what EMTs will do. If they find you dead, they are going to initiate CPR and they will take you to the hospital. If you survive, they'll have you in full treatment, which could be the ICU. This is important to recognize that. Now, if you choose to allow a natural death, do not attempt resuscitation. You get to choose from a different stages. So you get to choose either comfort measures, limited interventions, or full treatment. You have the authority to choose which one you prefer. So let me break those 3 different things down for you. Comfort measures. Keep me comfortable. Let me stay at home. Don't do anything extraordinary, but keep me comfortable. Limited interventions. You know, if I need to go to the hospital, let's go to the hospital. Let me get some treatment, but I do not want to be in the ICU. I don't want these extraordinary medical interventions that could keep me alive or keep my life prolonged. Full treatment. Hospital, ICU, I'm good with that. Let's do what we gotta do. These are the different levels and kind of what they mean when you choose them. Again, this is always going to be your decision at what level you'd like. But when you're making these decisions, it's important to ask a lot of questions. Ask your doctor if you're not sure what you want. Ask your doctor if you're not sure what these things mean. You have the opportunity to learn all about the pulse and what it can do for you. You just need to make sure you take the time to talk to your provider. Section C. Again, we're looking at artificial nutrition and hydration. It's really important. And they put it on there so that when you're in a hospital setting, they already know that you've made a decision and they will go off of this. It has no artificial hydration and nutrition by a tube. It has long-term nutrition by a tube. And then it has a defined trial period of artificial nutrition by tube. You get to say how long you'd like to try it, but keep in mind they will always offer food by mouth. They will always offer that. So just because you checked something under artificial nutrition and hydration, it doesn't mean that they're not going to try and give you something by mouth, as long as it's not dangerous for your health. Then you have to have this document signed. So it needs to be signed by, one, the person who's in the pulse. And if that person is not able to sign for themselves, it's recommended that their healthcare agent sign on their behalf. But it also needs to be signed by a medical provider. So either an APRN or a physician, your doctor. So in order for EMTs to actually honor this document, you have to have someone in the medical profession give you their information and sign off. The legally authorized representative It can be the parent of a minor. It can be a patient-designated surrogate, meaning I am the patient and I have named Cousin Lonnie to be my person in a healthcare setting. The healthcare setting has taken that as notation and put it into my files. I am designating Cousin Lonnie to be my person. And then it could also be a surrogate selected by consensus of interested persons. Now, I want to make sure that you understand what that looks like. Should you find yourself in a hospital and they need to figure out who's in charge of your care, if you don't have an advance directive naming your agent, naming your healthcare power of attorney, naming the person you trust to make decisions and speak on your behalf, what they will do is they'll call a consensus of interested persons, which means they'll call family members, they'll call friends, they'll call anyone who wants to be involved in your care. And those people need to come together and decide who's in charge. Now, I don't know about your family, but in my family, the loudest person usually wins. That doesn't necessarily do the patient's best interests. So avoid having them to have to figure it out, and do them that favor and just designate somebody in their advance directive. Once they have the consensus and a surrogate from those consensus of interested parties, let's say two sons don't agree and they don't come to an agreement. That could take guardianship. So I'm sure you've heard nightmares about people going to guardianship, people fighting over who's in charge. We've heard all about these cases where young women were in car accidents and their family and their spouse were fighting about who's in charge. This is what could happen if you don't designate somebody in your advance directive. It could go to guardianship. And guardianship involves getting the courts involved and a lot of money. So it's really important to prepare yourself by having this available for your loved ones. Whether it's on a post, but more likely on an advance directive, you're naming your person. Huh? So here's a good way to put them side by side. What's the difference between the advance directive and a post? Well, your advance directive is meant for anyone over the age of 18. We want all competent individuals to have an advance directive and name someone to be their healthcare agent. Even if that's the only thing you do on your advance directive, that is a step in the best direction so that you are covered and someone can be in charge if you're unable to speak for yourself. Your advance directive, it identifies future things. We're looking future. Your post is actually a right here, right now. What are we going to do today? Should a health crisis happen? A post is for any individual of any age. So yes, even children could have a post. Your advance directive appoints your healthcare representative. It appoints that person you trust to be your voice. Your post does not give the same authority to the person that you name as a legally authorized representative. So if you want to have that person have the same authority, you want to give them an advance directive and name them on your directive. The post can be honored by EMTs, not your advance directive. So it is very important to recognize that the two documents should be working together for your best care. And there's also the CPR aspect of the post. If you are found non-responsive, not breathing, if you have been found dead, would you like us to attempt CPR? That is honored in the post, not in your advance directive. You can write it in there so that your agent knows that's your wishes, but it's not going to be able to be honored by the first responders. So your practical considerations about the post is it should be on lime green paper. It should be easily found, but it is still legal on a white paper. So it's important to also recognize that if you are out and about in the community and you collapse, they are not going to go looking for your post. They are going to initiate whatever care they need to in order to get you to the hospital. If you are at home, you want to have it visibly available, either on the refrigerator, taped to the wall, someplace where first responders can scan the room and see it immediately. A copy should be given to the EMTs when they come so that they can take that with the individual to the hospital so that the wishes are known. And Pulse cannot be transferred from state to state. So the green form is the one that's here in Hawaii. If you're a snowbird and you go back and forth to the mainland, you might want to consider seeing if the state that you go to has their own form. And you can have that completed there. And it is possible to have a pulse here and a pulse there, just to ensure that your wishes are honored and understood. So where does the pulse fit in? Well, at age 18, we're encouraging people to do their advance directive, get these documents started. Name that agent that you trust so that if there's a car accident, if something should happen, you could get into a surfing accident, get hit by a boat, go hiking, have something happen. Go ahead and have that agent named. And as life progresses, go back and review that. See what's changed. See if your wishes are still in line with the document that you've done. Keep in mind, you can do your advance directive as many times as possible throughout life. And it's really important to update it as you go. Now, once diagnosed with a serious illness, medically frail, that's when we complete the pulse. And once we've completed the pulse, that dictates the way that care would be. And also, it's important to say you can change your pulse. You can change your mind. It's all right to do that. You are always in charge of your care as long as you're able to direct your own care. While these are great things and tools, I just want to touch upon something that we want to make sure that you are aware of and ask for in case you're in a time of crisis or have a serious illness. Palliative care is a great means of support. Palliative care is an integrated team support approach. So if you have a serious illness, whether or not it's terminal, you can have this added layer of supports there to help you through the illness. It comes with a team, and the team would consist of a doctor, a social worker, a nurse, and they're all trying to work together to ensure that you're getting the best care during a time of serious illness. You can also get treatment while you're in palliative care. So curative treatment, you can still get that. The next thing that we want to talk about is hospice. And I know hospice can be a scary subject, especially when people relate hospice to the phrase of death. I knew this when I approached Mom about hospice. So when Mom was hospice eligible, I said, Mom, you've been invited to a cool kids club. And now Mom was a teacher. So when I said she was invited to the cool kids club, her eyes perked up and she said, what's that? I said, well, not everyone is able to join the cool kids club. You have to be invited. But once you're in the cool kids club, you get your own doctor, you get your own nurse, you get your own social worker, you get your own faith advisor, and you get your own aide. That is your care team, and they are there to care for you. And she looked at me and she said, that sounds fabulous. I want that. That's the cool kids club. That's what hospice brings to the table. So I encourage you, if you find out that there is a terminal illness, ask whether it's hospice appropriate. People survive longer with that type of care because it's especially good, thorough care. People have been known to live much longer than predicted because they're getting better care in hospice. You hear stories about people graduating hospice, and that's because they've gotten such good care that they actually no longer need it, and they actually are no longer considered terminal. So again, hospice has this team approach. I encourage you to ask about it upon a diagnosis. First, ask for palliative care. If it's a terminal diagnosis, ask about hospice. It is something that Medicare pays for. So when you're on hospice, you do not need to worry about paying for the medications, incontinence supplies, or any equipment that you may need while in hospice. And they come to you wherever you call home. So you can be at home enjoying the services provided by hospice. Again, I just want to remind you what the difference are between advanced directives and pulse. Everyone, we're encouraging them to do your advanced directive, name your agent, make sure that that person knows how to support you. For pulse, it's meant for that specific population with health conditions, serious illness, diagnosis, different. But you want to make sure that if you have a pulse, you also have the advanced directive. Advanced directives, it's important to say that there's all different types of forms throughout the state of Hawaii. There's no one single form. So if you're a Kaiser member, it might look different. If you go to the VA, it might look different. It might look like our version. All of those are fine. If you go to the lawyer, it'll also look different. But it is recognized that you can download it yourself and do it yourself. The POLS, there is one and one only form for POLS. And that's the one that we went through today. And that lives on our website at Kokua Mau. Our executive director is the state POLS coordinator. So if you have any questions about it, feel free to send us an email, leave a message, and we'll be sure to get back to you. And in summary, we want you to think about your wishes for care. It doesn't have to be scary. It could actually be quite a gift that you could give to your loved ones. Select your agent, select your decision maker, have these conversations about what you want with them. Keep your advance directive, and if you have one, a POLS, readily available, and periodically review and update as you need to. We want to make sure that you are covered and your wishes for care can be honored because they've been expressed. One other tool that is available that I like to share with people is Smart 911. Smart 911 is a service that you could sign up for online, or you could have somebody who's computer savvy do it for you. You sign up online, you give them your address, you give them your phone number, but you can also tell them additional things in there so that when first responders pull up your address, they can see things about your health prior to even getting there. So if there's a hearing condition where they can't hear you, you can say, cannot hear without hearing aids in. If there's a deaf person, communicates via text. If there's a POLS is on refrigerator. Advanced directive is on refrigerator. These are things that you can tell first responders so that they know these things ahead of time. You can tell them you have dogs. You can tell them lives on the second floor upstairs room. You can tell them whatever you want them to know so that they have more information when walking into your home to provide care. So I know that's been a lot of information that we've gone through, but I hope you recognize how helpful these forms can be to ensure that you get the care that you want. So we want to invite you to come and join us at Kokua Mau. We have our mailing list that you can sign up for. We have tools that are available, all different types of resources that have been translated into 10 different languages. If you have a group that you think would benefit from having us talk about these end-of-life things, advanced care planning documents, we're happy to do that. We can set up a Zoom and ensure that you folks stay safe at home but are able to interact with us. We are happy to do this for churches, book clubs, senior clubs, whatever you have in mind. We're happy to do this for you. Just reach out and give us a call. The translations that I mentioned, they're in 10 different languages listed here. We encourage you, if you have somebody who needs to see this in a different language, go ahead and access them because they've been done, they've been translated, and they're free to download. Again, this is what's been translated so you can share it with your loved ones. And we invite you to join us as a member. If you have questions, feel free to send me an email, give me a call. I'm happy to answer any questions you may have. We encourage you to have these conversations with your loved ones. Document your wishes for care in both an advance directive and if you so need one, a POLS, and ensure that your loved ones know what your documents say. Again, my name is Hope Young. I'm with Kokua Mau. I'm the Advanced Care Planning Coordinator, and I'm happy that you joined us for this session. Mahalo.